Hi, I'm Bobbi. This is Culture Kitsch, and welcome to another episode of Recap Review, wherein I recap review a famous movie or TV show and give you little sprinklings of fun facts along the way. Released in 1999, She's All That is an often forgotten teen comedy classic. Directed by Robert Iscove, She's All That is the Pygmalion and My Fair Lady adaptation in the grand landscape of late 90s teen comedy Shakespeare adaptations. It stars Rachel Leigh Cook, Freddie Prinze Jr., Matthew Lillard, Paul Walker, Gabrielle Union, Lil Kim, Usher, and two Oscar winners in Anna Paquin and now Kieran Culkin. So without further ado, let's get into the review. So the film opens with one half of our main character duo in Lainey Boggs, who is played by Rachel Leigh Cook. And the name Lainey Boggs is actually a reference to two famous Winona Ryder characters. One half being Lainey from Reality Bites, which is a character played by Winona Ryder. And then the Boggs is the last name of the character that Winona plays in Edward Scissorhands. So this is a very Winona forward character. Lainey is our kind of artsy fartsy girl. She is a collage artist because of course she is. And she's kind of not exactly an ugly duckling. She's just a little bit odd, a little bit strange, and my type of girl, you know what I mean? She's the original thought daughter in a lot of ways. We see Lainey get up her brother and get him ready for school. And her brother is played by none other than Oscar winner Kieran Culkin. Kieran Culkin, who at the time was one of the not as famous Culkins, but now he's got an Emmy and an Oscar and has been all over the place. So he's moved up in the rank of Culkins, let's just say. And you'll notice in this movie, he wears hearing aids. And for the longest time with this film, it was a mystery to audiences and apparently to Kieran as well, as to why his character Simon wears hearing aids, because it's never really referenced.
They said that my character was going to be deaf and have no dialogue, and I said, great, that's the thing I came for. I was like, I actually know a little bit of sign language, it'll be fun. And I get there and they said, well, you know what we're going to do is we're going to give you these hearing aids that you wear at school, so you'll talk, but at home you'll do the sign language. So they established that in the first day, and they're like, actually, we decided to get rid of the deaf thing and the sign language. I was like, okay, but we established these, so you got to wear them now, and it'll just never be referred to again.
So that's why he's got the hearing aids. So we finally meet Zach, who is played by love of my life, Freddie Prinze Jr. And Zach is the star athlete on the soccer team, and he is the class president. He's kind of like the top dog at this school. One of the things that's most striking about this character and Freddie Prinze Jr.'s performance as this character is Zach is a really earnest guy. He's very sweet. I think the archetype of the jock and the top student is that of a really arrogant kind of prick. And I think Zach does have those capabilities, but you can tell that he's got a lot more heart than I think some male protagonists in late 90s teen comedies tend to have. And he wanted to play him a little bit sweeter so that the audience would have room to be sympathetic to him to a certain degree. So they wouldn't just be like, he messed up, he had it coming. But there is room for sympathy with a character like this when he kind of plays him a little bit more earnest. And we'll see that as the film goes along. One of the most striking things about this movie is how many Black characters there are. Because if you're a fan of late 90s teen comedies, it's a pretty lily white affair, right? But this movie does have, albeit they're in supporting roles, so they're not leads or anything, but it is kind of crazy that they have multiple Black characters who consistently get lines and have some involvement within the narrative. One of Zach's best friends, Dule Hill. You have a character that we'll meet later, Taylor. One of her best friends is Gabrielle Union, and also Lil Kim. It's I wouldn't say that this is a movie that was on the cutting edge of racial equity in Hollywood films, but it was kind of striking to me. I was like, oh, Black people in a teen comedy. What a concept. Zach is dating this other popular person at the school because that's what you do, named Taylor Vaughn. Taylor is kind of like, I guess, like a head cheerleader type, but she's not exactly as earnest as Zach is. She's a bit stuck up and a bit mean, but they are dating. They go together because that is the social hierarchy that high school requires. Well, I should say that they were dating because during spring break, Taylor went on a bit of a bender, and she went to MTV's Spring Break, wherein she met a man by the name of Brock Hudson, who's played by Matthew Lillard. And it's really interesting to think about, like, kind of taking a pause from the movie. It's really interesting to think about that idea because a reality TV star is a little bit more commonplace, I think, in the Hollywood landscape of now. But at that time, like, being on the Real World, which is like where he's from, literally, like that's the show that he was on, reality TV was still in its infant stages. And so someone being famous from reality TV was a very novel concept. The film takes a lot of really interesting visual and creative swings when depicting like a character recounting something, or like there's like a nightmare sequence later in the film. But in this case, Taylor sees Zach and basically is recounting her cheating escapades during spring break. And they kind of like meld the scenes together of her talking to Zach in the high school with the MTV Spring Break kind of setup. And it's really, really cool. The meshing of the scenes together makes it a little bit more dynamic and interesting. Taylor is explaining to Zach that she did, in fact, cheat on him with Brock Hudson, and they both got really dumbass tattoos, and now they're together. But don't worry, Zach. Taylor has assured you that you can still go to prom together because obviously you're both going to be prom king and queen. So y'all are done. The relationship is done, but your prom date is still going to be her. So the interesting thing is that Lainey is the kind of artsy fartsy girl. And I think in a lot of teen comedies, there's this like hierarchy of the outcasts versus the jocks. But I love when these movies explore that there are hierarchies even within different social groups. So for example, Lainey, when we kind of cut back to her in a longer form way, she's like being bullied by these other artsy fartsy girls. And let me tell you something, these little goth bitches are getting creative with their reads of Lainey. Like it's insane. Like they had a setup and everything. They yes-anded each other while bullying this girl. That's crazy. One of the like themes that the movie affirms is that, you know, like it doesn't matter what side of the social hierarchy you come from. If you're a bad person, you'll always be a bad person. And bad people can be the jocks, but they can also be the outcasts. But good people can be the star athlete and class president or the weird girl who does collage art. And that's unity. Like that's like that's one of the tenets of this movie is, you know, good people can be found anywhere and bad people can be found anywhere. And it's just so funny. We move along. We find out that Usher is the school DJ, and I'm not really sure if he goes to class or not. It just seems like he's like this omnipresent voice of God that's just explaining the thoughts of the students at any given time that they cut to him. And my first thought when I saw him was like, do you go to class? Are you just there narrating the thoughts of the students at any given point? Or do you like go to class? So of course now we have to meet Zach's friends. So we meet Dean and Preston. I said previously that Preston was played by Dulé Hill and Dean is played by the late Paul Walker. Dean is very bro-y. He is the like best friend of Zach, and he is, I think, what this character was initially kind of written to be. He's very arrogant, kind of not demeans people, but clearly doesn't see anyone who's not on the same social status of him, like doesn't even acknowledge really anyone else. And Zach is like a little bit different, but it has been found out that Taylor has dumped Zach. So Zach is now on the prowl, and I think his ego is a little bit bruised. So Dean is telling him, you're never going to get another Taylor Vaughn, blah, 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 blah. And Zach is like, I made her, basically. Zach literally says that she's like an illusion. And the only reason why she has the social status at the school that she has is by like proxy of being with him. Like her attachment to him is what boosted her status. So ultimately that leads to Dean and Zach creating a little bit of a bet, because Zach is very braggadocious in saying that, like, you know, I could do that to any girl. Like what happened to Taylor could happen to anyone. So they create this bet that they have 6 weeks to turn a kind of social outcast girl into prom queen. And thus begins the plot of this movie. It's all hinged on this bet, this very misogynistic bet, of course, but a bet nonetheless. Now we're tasked, Zach and Dean, with picking who will be the lucky lady that Zach turns into the belle of the ball. And in this sequence, we see them kind of look at different girls. Of course, they have to be, you know, misogynistic and fat phobic with it. But there is one girl that they see who in broad daylight was digging a wedgie out. Just, first of all, nothing covert about that. I'm like, diva, you have to have some shame. You need to go to the store and get some shame, because that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous, mama. Why are you digging out in the open like that? Oh my gosh. Dean lands on Lainey. And Lainey, I guess, kind of has this reputation of being the freak girl at this school, to the point where Zach calls her scary and inaccessible. And when I heard those words, I was like, is this fucking play about me? Because I was like, oh, main character girl with glasses who's scary and inaccessible, feels like the movie is now talking about me. Oh, okay, interesting. Didn't think I was going to be called out by 1999 She's All That in the comfort of my own home. But Dean is like, no, Lainey is perfect because she is just so crazy off-putting that this little scheme that Zach has would never work on her. Now, I look at Lainey, but pre her transformation, whatever, and she is gorgeous and stunning. She's gorgeous and stunning. But it's the thing that, like, I think that this movie kind of gets ragged on about, which is just like, Lainey is obviously a very attractive girl. So this whole idea that she's just scary and inaccessible, it's just like, okay, she's like a little bit socially inept, but that we can work on that. Like, that doesn't require all of this stuff, but whatever. Zach and Dean agree on it. They choose Lainey. And here we go. So the day ends, Zach goes home, and we now meet his little sister named Mackenzie, who is played by Oscar winner Anna Paquin. And she had an Oscar at the point of filming this movie. And she was like one of the youngest actresses to win an Oscar. So she's like, she gets, I think, either an and or with credit in this movie because she has an Oscar. Like, I think I think it's just so funny. Like, she's in this teen movie, and like, she's not in very much of it, but it's just like, She's All That, starring Oscar winner Anna Paquin, who would then go on to play Rogue in the Fox X-Men movies, and of course my nemesis, Sookie Stackhouse. Listen, love Anna Paquin, hate Sookie Stackhouse, and that's the duality of me. Zach now has told his sister about this plan of his, and she suggests that he do the very normal human thing of, why don't you try to get to know her before you try to make the moves on this girl. Because Zach, I think, is a guy that's been very used to getting attention simply just by existing. Through his little sister's advice, he goes to Lainey's job, and this will begin many sequences in which we will see Zach just showing up to places. He just pops up at her house. He pops up at her job. He pops up on her at school. Zach is just always there. He's always there. She works at a falafel place, and she's wearing this very fun falafel hat, which apparently was Rachel Leigh Cook's idea to have. Like, she was like, I want this character to wear this like gaudy, kitschy falafel hat to wear at the falafel restaurant she works at. So Zach shows up, and he's just like, Lainey, like, he's thinking she's going to be like, oh, Zach is at my place of work. Oh my gosh, I must, like, what does he want with me? And Lainey is not having any of it. She's basically like, what do you want? I'm not smart. Like, she tells him, she's like, I'm not smart. And he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, if you want to like steal my homework or me to tutor you or whatever, I can't do that. I'm not a smart person. And then Zach kind of gags her, and he's just like, Lainey, I'm the top of the class. And she's like, oh, okay, well, period. Then I guess you don't need my help. But Zach lies and tells Lainey that he's interested in art, and art is right up her alley. So he wants to get to know her via her art. And so she kind of puts him to the test, and it's just like, okay, if you want my help with art, you're going to have to play by my rules and come to my spot to take in some art. One of the things that we learn about Zach is that he's this character that has a lot of, I guess, internal conflict. His conflict, his thing, his burden to bear is that he hasn't declared where he's going to go to school yet. His father went to Dartmouth, and so there's this expectation that he should also go to Dartmouth. And he's been like accepted by so many schools, but he doesn't know, where he wants to be. His head's in the game, but his heart's in the song. Troy Bolton, this is your father. So Zach shows up to the Jester Theater, and it is a interpretive art, performance art space. He's watching Lainey in this performance art piece that I'm not even going to try to make sense of it because I don't really know what it means, but it just ends with Lainey coming in and being like, be silent, be still, be silent, be still. And I was like, all right, be silent, be still, work. Like, I don't know what that means really. But anyways, once we get through whatever that was, Lainey kind of not sets him up. Lainey kind of like calls him on his bluff and invites him to come up on stage and do art in front of this sea of strangers. So what Zach decides to do, as you would do in this circumstance, if you were this guy who shows up to a performance art space in 1999, you too would pull out a hacky sack and do a interpretive art piece to hacky sack. So that's what Zach does. He pulls out this hacky sack and starts kind of saying this monologue about like, don't drop. And what he's kind of projecting is that he feels this burden of expectation and he's carrying a lot of weight and he can't drop it. But that being communicated via performance art with a hacky sack is crazy and hilarious. And what's funny is that in this scene, I think it was originally supposed to be that Freddie Prinze Jr. was kind of doing it all practically, obviously, and like it was him doing the hacky sack. But then he was like, doing hacky sack is like really difficult actually. So in the wide shots, it cuts to a guy who's totally not Freddie Prinze Jr. and is actually some like world champion hacky sack player, practicer, performer, who does some of the more intricate tricks during this performance art piece. He does that and the crowd goes mild. I think they don't know what to make of it, and neither did I, but he did it and it seemed like he really enjoyed doing it. I don't know if you can really get on in any prestigious art spaces with hacky sack performance art, but what do I know? He seemed earnest about this. Again, word of the day was Zach, earnest. They are leaving the theater, and at the corner, he, does the thing that a lot of guys do right before they're about to kiss you, threatening. He, just looks at her, and she's like, what? And he's just like, your eyes are so beautiful. And Lainey cuts that down immediately. She's just like, my eyes are so beautiful. Okay, whatever. And just leaves him on the corner. Like, doesn't doesn't take it for 2 seconds. She sees right through him immediately. And I just, like I said, it further affirms that, like, to a guy like Zach, like, he thinks giving someone his attention is the gift. Like, he thinks, I am doing Lainey a real solid by being remotely interested, or even a little bit like acknowledging her existence. And she's just like, I live my life and have lived my life without you in it this whole time. My life isn't automatically better because you are giving me the time of day, Zach Seiler. Like I said, Zach just makes a habit of just showing up. And so he shows up to Lainey's house and it's just like, why did you blow me off and do all this stuff? And she's just like, because it's just so obvious. Like, basically he was just like, oh, you blew me off. I think the words that they use are like, you were wigging out, which is that's just so 1999. Like, you were wigging out. It was major wiggage is what he says. And I'm like, what are these words that you were saying right now? I'm not understanding. That leads to Zach inviting Lainey to the beach to, again, attempt to get to know her, to try and further pursue this grift, to do something. So Lainey hems and haws a little bit, but she eventually concedes. They make it to the beach, and who shows up other than all of Zach's friends, including Dean and Dean basically wants to embarrass Zach by bringing all of their friends around to see that Zach is hanging out with Lainey. Like, that's the whole reason why they're doing this. I guess to see if Zach is serious about this bet or whatever. But yeah, so Dean is obviously trying to antagonize the situation further. And we kind of see like there's a weird kind of melding of Lainey with this group. I don't think she's like totally like oil and water with them, but she just like, calls them on their stuff. And I think Gabrielle Union's character really likes her because she's real. Like, she's a real girl. And this friend group that is kind of, fake to a certain degree. So, of course, it's a teen comedy. We have to have a little montage, a little like scene at the beach. And that's what we get with, they're all playing volleyball. And it's just like really fun. Like, oh my gosh, everyone's getting along and it's great. And, Zach's friend group is getting to know Lainey. Lainey's getting to know them. Maybe something real is sprouting up from this situation. That will not last. That will not last. Preston is throwing a party and he invites Lainey and Zach and everyone there. And Lainey's kind of, hesitant because she's just like, I don't know if that's my scene. I don't know if that's my vibe. But Zach eventually convinces her to go to this party. The main thing to know with Lainey is that she kind of pushes people out. So anytime that Zach tries to get her to be a little bit more social or to come around more, she's very hesitant to do so. Like, she's just like, I don't know if this is the right thing for me. She always makes excuses. So Zach kind of has to beat her at her own game and not let her be able to make excuses. And so that's when we get the next scene where Lainey is like, oh, I've got to clean the house. So I can't go to this party. So, thanks, but no thanks. And Zach, being a guy who has, I guess, access and status, can kind of skirt past any excuse that she makes. And so in the next scene, when she is trying to get it, blow him off from the party, he shows up to her house with the entirety of the JV soccer team, him as the captain of the varsity team. He basically treats the JV team like pledges, essentially, so they can just do his bidding. He's also shown up with his sister, Mackenzie, who he's tasked with giving Lainey a makeover. And so they go up and do that. Zach is greeted by Simon, Lainey's brother, who is just like, Zach, my man. Like, and there's a really fun kind of relationship that happens between Zach and Simon. And I think that does endear Zach to Lainey a little bit more because of how Zach treats Simon, but it's just a very funny dynamic. It is within this like horde of nameless JV soccer players who are cleaning Lainey's house is a young Milo Ventimiglia. So he would go on, obviously, to be in Gilmore Girls and This Is Us, but he is in the scene. He does get, like, a named credit in the credits too. So he's in it. But of course, this is the scene that contains the scene set to Kiss Me by Sixpence None the Richer. Lainey is now transformed. She is turned from Clark Kent into Superman. She finally gets rid of those heinous extensions that she was wearing at the beginning of this film. And her hair is now short. She's wearing this bold red dress, which, like you guys know, I love costume design. And this is a really big moment for Lainey. Like, we haven't really seen her in this bright or bold of a color before. So it really shows that this is her coming into her own and feeling very radiant and beautiful for the first time and all of those things. Like, it's a very simple kind of costuming choice, but like, this is the first time that she sees herself in this light. And of course, Zach sees her and is smitten. Like, you kind of forget that this bet is happening in the background of everything going on, because there is a really clear and obvious attraction that's happening, especially from Zach's end. Like, he's like taken by her coming down the steps. When we get to this party, it just reminds me, like, oh, they have money. Like, these are kids with a whole lot of money and not a whole lot of supervision, because this is like a house party where there's like drinks and cigarettes. And I think every time I watch teen movies where that's like taking place, I always feel like such a nerd in a square, because I was like, I was not doing that in high school. That was not my bag, which is why I love a movie like Booksmart so much, because like how they were, like the main characters of that movie are, that was me in high school. The main things to note at this party is that Brock Hudson and Taylor Vaughn are there, and Brock is embarrassing Taylor immediately and not really paying attention to her. Dean is being kind of a right asshole with Zach, being like, don't tell me you're falling for Lainey. And Zach's playing it cool, but like, Dean knows, I know, everyone knows Zach is falling for Lainey. Like, that's very clear and obvious to me. Lainey also finds the like bitchy goth girl from the beginning of the movie. And she's like laid out drunk, throwing up in the toilet, and still finds time to be the bitchy goth girl. Cause she's just like, I'm going to a top art school and I'm rich and you're here cleaning up my puke. And then she passes out, and within the bag that she has are like oil paint crayons. And so Lainey takes it upon herself to take some artistic liberties with those oil paintings on Miss Thing's face. And so she kind of gets her little comeuppance in that regard. After Lainey gets her comeuppance on the art girl who's been bullying her, she comes face to face with Taylor, and both of them are wearing red dresses. And so Zach is like caught between a rock and a hard place, split by his two loves. Taylor, the girl who he kind of dated, I guess, out of obligation, and then Lainey, who's this girl that he clearly has the hots for, but is like only courting because of this bet. And now there's this really weird dynamic that's at play. And so Taylor sees Lainey and it's just like, what are you doing here? It does the whole like, mean girl speech or whatever, and says a very like 90s teen comedy line, which is just like, you're vapor, you're spam, you're a waste of perfectly good yearbook space. So with that in mind, I want to take a second to talk about the script, because there's kind of an interesting history with the script of this movie, because there's some contention. So the credited writer of the script is a person by the name of R. Lee Fleming Jr., and he's like the sole writer. But in the audio commentary of The Sixth Sense, director M. Night Shyamalan claimed to have ghost-written the script for She's All That. There was some contention back and forth between Fleming and Shyamalan, but it wasn't confirmed until years later by someone who worked at Miramax that they were both kind of right. R. Lee Fleming Jr. had written the script, and it was basically the script was done, and M. Night Shyamalan came in and kind of like punched it up and made the characters a little bit deeper, make the story a little bit deeper, and just kind of like made everything flow a little bit better together. So they kind of both, obviously like had a hand in it. But yeah, so technically M. Night Shyamalan had a part in the script for this movie, which I thought was incredibly interesting. But the dialogue is very much of its time. Like someone saying, you know, you're a waste of perfectly good yearbook space is such a like 90s cliche line, but I do love it in the context of this movie. So Lainey obviously storms out of the party after this confrontation because that's the right thing to do. And Zach runs after her and she's just like, you know, for a second, I thought that I was actually feeling good about myself. But now I remember why I don't want to deal with you people, because you're just so mean. You know, it's just so mean and so cruel to me. And Zach, I think this is him coming to the conclusion that the people that he surrounds himself with are not good people. And he's really beginning to question, why is he friends with these people? He clearly is taking a liking to Lainey and sees that she is this person who doesn't have to demean others to feel good about themselves. And so Zach is really questioning his standing in everything. He's going on a bit of a journey by himself within the grand landscape of this movie. So in the next scene, the prom angle of this movie really begins to kick up. And we find out that Lainey has been nominated for prom queen. And it begs the question that everyone has on their mind, which is, who the hell would have nominated Lainey? She's questioning it. I'm questioning it. Usher was questioning it. Everyone's questioning it. But she got nominated, and people seem to be having her back in that regard. She's going up against Taylor Vaughn, who's kind of, I guess, the incumbent winner. She's the I won't say obvious choice. She was the person who, if she's not prom queen, I think it would have killed her. But in this scene where Lainey finds out that she has been nominated for prom queen, Taylor's friends like come up and they're just like, oh my God, congratulations, Lainey. And Lil Kim's character, whose name is Alex, has not gotten much in the way of lines. But she gets her big line and she's just like, you totally deserved it. But the way she says it is so like, I don't know if she was meant to like mean it or if she's like kind of being nice nasty with her. I'm not really sure, but that line reading definitely left a lot to be desired. And then later on she gives a line reading that just sounds like Frenchie from Grease, like she's wearing a Letterman's jacket and she's just like, what happened? And it just sounds like it could have been from Grease. I'm like, Kim, do you know what movie you're in? Like, it's just so many choices being made artistically. Also, another choice being made. What's the dress code at this school? Because another girl who's in Taylor's little friend group, I think her name is Chandler, is literally just wearing like a string bikini to class. Like, why are you in a sequence of strings and like a little bit of fabric going to math class? Like, I get that it's California and it's hot, but she's wearing like a backless, like little two-piece number midriff out. I'm like, did dress codes just not exist around this time? Or like, what's the situation here? So of course, because this is a teen comedy, we got to have the obligatory locker room scene. It's very akin to the locker room scene at the beginning of Bring It On. But in this moment, Dean is kind of like further antagonizing Lainey and is kind of like talking down on her. And now because Zach is like forming really real feelings for Lainey, he's not taking it. And they get into like a massive fight over it. And so now Dean has now hatched the idea that he's going to try and steal Lainey from underneath Zach. Simply because I guess he is bored or because he can, I'm not really sure. So Zach kind of shows up to Lainey's house again, unannounced, and sees her real art for the first time. I think he's kind of known her as the artsy girl, but never in a like super meaningful way in that he's seen her art. So he sees her work for the first time and she's doing a piece about her mother. And so she kind of explains herself, like, this is the scene where the characters bare their souls to each other. And she basically says that, you know, her mother died when she and her brother were very little. And she was like, I don't remember crying. And I just remember that nothing would ever be the same again. And Zach kind of not confronts her, but just tells her, it's like, you block yourself off. Like, why do you do that? And she's just like, this is just kind of how I am. Basically, this is just how she protects herself from ever really being hurt. And don't worry, they don't spend a ton of time on that, because they very quickly go to Lainey being like, well, Zach, what about you? I went to the counselor's office yesterday and I saw that you had undecided next to your name. You need to pick a college to go to. You got to pick your future. And he's just explaining to her, like, you know, my dad went to Dartmouth and now I feel like I also have to go to Dartmouth, but I'm also scared of the future. And so, yeah, I think this is where you can tell that there were clearly two minds set on how to write this movie, because Zach's whole thing is just like, yeah, I'm scared for the future. And it feels like they wanted to make the whole thing of him trying to follow in his father's footsteps a little bit more prominent, but then they kind of renege on it and they're just like, well, he's just scared of the future. And it's just like, okay, Diva, which is it? You know, it can be both. And there's a way to marry those two ideas together, but I don't think it actually comes to fruition in this movie. I really don't. But ultimately that scene kind of concludes with Lainey just being like, you get to pick your future. And he's just like, wow, I never really thought of it like that. I guess I can. And that's literally it. But then he goes and I guess wants to move in to kiss Lainey. Again, I think he still has the little shreds of him thinking that giving her his time and attention and like how he's going to really seal the deal with his whole thing by like tricking her into thinking he likes her is by kissing her. But then he's again feels the very real feelings that he is forming for her and pulls out of the kiss. He's like, oh, too real. And so he runs away. And so now Lainey, who was, I think, ready and willing with the kiss, like she was wanting it, he was wanting it. And so then he like runs away. And so she's rightly confused by that fact. So Zach is having these worries and trepidations of what will happen if Lainey finds out that this was all a bet, and like what will happen with their relationship and the kind of the friendship that they formed, and like how is she going to see him. And that manifests in a nightmare scene set in the real world, like not the real world, but the show, The Real World. And he's kind of like going through the motion, like he's scared, and it manifests within an episode of The Real World, which I thought was, again, like an inventive way to do that, like a fun and inventive way to do that. We're at lunch. Lainey is wondering what went down with Zach. Why did he run away from me when we went to kiss? And she's like, am I kissable? Like, she literally asked her friends that, like, am I kissable? And they're like, Diva, I don't know. We also get a random sighting of one Sarah Michelle Gellar, aka Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who is in this movie but has no lines, and that is on purpose. She apparently was on set visiting Freddie Prinze Jr. because I think they might have been dating at this point. And so she was visiting him on set. They asked her to be in the movie and she agreed, but on the condition that she wouldn't be, like, she didn't want to have any lines. She didn't want to speak. And so they were like, okay, we can do that. Like, we can have it to where you don't have any lines. So she is interacting with Kieran Culkin's character, Simon, who's just randomly going around offering ground pepper. Like, this is a restaurant. Again, Kieran Culkin knew who he was from a very young age. He plays himself in a lot of movies because that's just such a random thing for this character to be doing. And so he's like, fresh ground pepper. And like, she's just like pantomiming to him. She's like gives him the plate and she just is just like, and then goes up. It's so strange, but like knowing that she didn't want to have any lines makes a lot of sense. But the whole thing of this scene is that Simon is now being bullied by these two guys. And Zach sees it and is not having any of it. Him and Simon are friends. So he's going to stick up for his friend. And as like the top dog of the school, the bullies kind of like cower down to him. And one of the bullies was going to make Simon eat a pizza with his pubes on it. So he like sticks his hand in his pants, pulls out pubes and like puts it on a pizza, and they're going to make Simon eat it. And Zach comes in and basically is not having that. So he forces these bullies to eat the pube pizza in defense of his best friend, Simon. And Lainey is seeing all of this and she's just, again, very confused. She's like, You almost kissed me. You're sticking up for my brother in front of the lunchroom. What are these signals? Basically, she's like, what are we? And Zach kind of runs away again because he's being confronted with the real feelings that he's having for Lainey, and he doesn't know what to do with it. Dean, after this fight that he has with Zach, he's going to make the moves and try to swoop in and steal Lainey from Zach, which is just so, whatever. In a scene mirroring the original scene at the falafel restaurant where Lainey works, Dean now comes in and is like, I'd love to get to know you and all of this stuff. And again, Lainey sees right through it and she's just like, okay, what do you want? I'm not having this. But the one thing that is able to kind of penetrate Lainey's cynicism is the vulnerability that she's feeling about Zach not really reciprocating with her. I mean, she doesn't know that Zach is obviously feeling her, but just is too scared to admit it. But she's thinking, okay, what's going on? What did I do wrong? So Dean comes in and it's just like, Zach doesn't really care about you and he doesn't treat you well. And Dean is a master male manipulator. So he's clearly throwing all of his male manipulator arsenal at her. And it's like, working. We come back to Zach, who has now been confronted by his dad. Zach has been hoarding all of these acceptance letters to like the top schools like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and still has not made a decision yet. He's also been accepted to his dad's alma mater, Dartmouth, and he still has not confirmed where he's going to go. His dad confronts him and is just like, you need to pick a school. And he has this scene is not funny, but it's just like, he's mad at his dad because he feels like he has the burden of expectation, but we have not gotten nearly enough of this dynamic to really like see that. And so we know what Zach's conflict is, but I think it could have just played out like a little bit better. But he tells his dad, it's like, you're barely here. And then when you are here, you're pissed off. And his dad is just like, don't give me that. And then Zach says like, you want me to pick your future. And his dad is just like, oh, I'm sorry it came off that way, but like you can go wherever you want to go. The future is coming whether you want it to or not. And so that makes Zach be like, oh, you're right, Dad. Like, yeah, the future is what I make it. So I guess I can just choose wherever I want to go. Like Lainey, the love of my life, said to me a couple scenes ago. It's just like, Zach, you had this option all along, bud. I get it. He has the burden of expectation. He feels like he has to follow in his father's footsteps. But his dad very quickly like affirms. He's just like, oh, no, you don't have to. You can go wherever you want. I just want you to go somewhere. I want you to be happy and just know that the future is coming, bud. But yeah, you don't. I'm sorry that you felt like I wanted you to do that. You don't have to do that. And so that gets resolved very quickly. So now that Zach has come to the conclusion that his future is what he makes it, revelation, he now learns that Dean is moving in to ask Lainey to prom, something that he was going to do. Did he make it clear to Lainey that he was going to do that? No, he didn't at all. So Zach is confronting Dean about it being really inauthentic that he now wants to take Lainey to prom, but Dean puts that thing down, flips it, and reverses it on Zach and basically brings up the bet. He's like, Zach, you really ought to let this bet go, even though they both agree to these terms. And Lainey learns about the details of the bet, and she asks him, she's just like, was I a fucking bet? And Rachel Leigh Cook said that, like, filming that scene was a little bit difficult because Freddie Prinze Jr. was, like, legitimately getting a little choked up. I think Zach feels very remorseful, and that comes through in the performance. And she was just like, it was just the cutest thing that I had ever seen, that he was like legitimately getting a little emotional about Lainey feeling so used and hurt. Like, Zach is an empath, really. But basically Lainey is just like, oh, Zach, we're done. I'm going to go with Dean. 'Cause Dean fooled her. Essentially completely fooled her. So Zach is obviously very remorseful and keeps trying to like call Lainey, and she's not picking up. She's not having it. Simon at one point picks up the phone and he's just like, get lost, asshole. So that's how you know it's really over, if Simon and Zach are no longer speaking too. So, of course, this is the point in the film where we get what I like to call the 4Q PPT, which is the fourth quarter parent pep talk. And so now her dad is going and saying, like, you need to be young and go to prom. Like, isn't prom tonight? You should go and have fun for yourself, not for anyone. And Lainey's like, you know what? You're right, Dad. I should be young and I should go to prom. And her dad is like, there's someone upstairs waiting for you. And you can see a little spark in her eye where she's thinking, maybe it's Zach who's come along and is remorseful and ready to sweep her off her feet. But grand reveal, the person waiting at her house is Dean. Dean is there playing the nice guy. And he's just like, I didn't even ask anyone else, off the hopes that maybe you would want to go with me. And it's just like, okay, whatever. But Lainey decides to go to prom with Dean. Now, earlier, Taylor, who she got dumped by Brock at a certain point in the movie, so she's feeling a little bit dejected. She goes to tell Zach, hey, we can go to the prom just as friends. And she's just like assuming that he's going to fall back in line with her, but he doesn't. He decides to take his sister to prom instead and leaves Taylor waiting at home for him to never come. So I love that little moment. He's growing, he's learning, he's changing as a person. So what I love about the late teen comedy boom is that you get almost all of these movies involve prom or homecoming to some extent. And I love to see little snapshots of like, what would teens have been wearing to big events like that? Like, what would their prom dresses have looked like? And in this movie, the accessory name of the game is shawls. A lot of shawls made of stiff fabrics, a lot of reflective metallics, glitters. Everyone is shellacked in body glitter in this movie. A lot of frosted lips. A lot of that is happening. Very turn of the century vibes happening. Turn of the millennium vibes, actually. And so, it's very interesting to see. I love looking at movies from this time period because they are snapshots of time. They may not have been what every teen was wearing, but like they are pulling from something. And so it's really fun to see from a costuming perspective, like what were they wearing to prom? And it is a lot of what you would expect for 1999, but still fun to see nonetheless. Zach sees Lainey there with Dean, and he's like, now's my time. I got to make my move. I got to apologize to this girl because I really, really like her. And he can't quite do that because he is interrupted by a choreography, by a random choreography break wherein at the dance, some of the students just bust out into a choreographed practice dance in the middle of prom. And originally this scene was just kind of like in there without any real buildup, but the studio had a lot of trepidation because it's just so off from the rest of the movie. And the director of the movie, Robert Iscove, was a choreographer. So of course a dance scene is really going to appeal to him. So basically they remedied the kind of weird clunkiness of this scene by adding in more scenes with Usher where he's like, oh, y'all remember the dance I taught you in dance class? So then that begs the question of like, is he a student or is he a dance teacher? What's the vibe here? But anyways, he canonically, I guess, taught all of his fellow students this dance. And so they do it during prom. And also another fun fact is that this scene was choreographed by Adam Shankman, who is the director of one of the best movie musicals ever made, 2007's Hairspray. So this scene may be strange, but it still is very much so iconic. Yeah, absolutely. So the big thing with this scene is that Dean has now concocted this plan, now that he's gotten Lainey to prom, that he bought this hotel room to see if he could score with Lainey, see if he can have sex with her. And so he's telling all of his plans to the guys in the bathroom, yelling, first of all, his plans to the guys in the male bathroom. And all of them are like, you're weird and a loser, which they should have been said that, let's be real. But he's just like, tonight is the night. And this guy is just like, ugh, like, it's just so, it's embarrassing, first of all. But in the bathroom, hearing this conversation is Lainey's friend, who we learn's name is Jesse Jackson. That's the name of this white boy. And he has kind of struck up a little bit of a meet cute with Zach's sister, who Zach brought Mackenzie to the prom. So they've struck up a little bit of a meet cute, and now they find out that Dean has these grand plans. So they've got to tell Zach so that he can try and put a stop to it. In the midst of all this, Zach wins prom king, Taylor wins prom queen, as is, decided. And Dean and Lainey decide to leave prom. Mackenzie and Jesse eventually tell Zach the situation, and he is now driving and calling every hotel in LA to see where these two are, because he's like, I've got to save my woman from getting defiled by this nasty man known as Dean, who's my former friend. It's this real kind of contentious moment because he's just like driving around, calling every hotel, being like, do you have a room 409 under the name Dean, what's his face? And he's really looking for them. Like, he knows that Lainey would not want to be put in that situation, and he's coming to her rescue, I guess. But eventually we see that Lainey is now made it home, and who's there waiting for her? Zach. And he's there, and he's remorseful, and he's just like, Lainey, I'm so sorry and everything. But I think they just both really missed each other. And there's this beautiful scene that it definitely felt like it was supposed to be the ending of the movie. But it's not. It's like the second to last scene where they're dancing outside in Lainey's backyard, reconciling, and they're dancing to Sixpence None the Richer, which, fun fact, because of this movie, the success of this movie, because this movie made almost $200 million at the box office. And so it was like pretty successful. Sixpence None the Richer's Kiss Me, which is like the song in this movie, went on to make it to, I think it charted at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed in the top 10 for 16 weeks and was so popular that in Italy, they changed the name of the movie, She's All That, to Kiss Me, because this song just did numbers like that. The movie is basically over, but we can't forget the bet that happened between Zach and Dean. And Zach did technically lose because Lainey didn't win prom queen. So the terms of the bet that Lainey learns were that Zach had to walk graduation completely naked. And he does. And that is how we end the movie. Sixpence None the Richer takes us on home. And that is She's All That. Now, is this movie a really superb, fantastic movie? One could say, no, not really. It's kind of in the grand scheme of the late 90s teen comedy renaissance. It maybe isn't the most memorable addition into that collection, but I love this movie because of the earnestness of it. You can feel that there is a genuine connection that's kind of forging between these two characters. And the performances are really fun. The costuming is really fun. I had a fun time, okay? Obviously, there are better teen comedies that came out around this time, but this one just kind of like holds a special place in my heart. And that was our Be Kind recap review. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Please let me know down below what you'd like to see next. And as always, I'm Bobbi. This is Culture Kitsch. I do not have an outro yet, but I will see you next week.